Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are jumping right into a comprehensive overview of the architectural blueprint for a fascinating proposed digital platform. It's called Akrmna, Higher Law. We're going to examine the grand overview of this system using the developer's original documentation, keeping things strictly impartial to understand exactly how it aims to operate.
The blueprint actually begins with this massive, incredibly ambitious question. How do you solve thousands of years of translation bias? It's a huge thought, right? Well, the proposed solution relies on a very strict technological framework that's designed to essentially unify human understanding of our oldest texts. Let's look at how it's built.
Section 1. Universal Problems with Scripture.
Okay, let's dive into this grand overview. The blueprint identifies a few core, absolutely universal problems that people face with foundational texts. We're talking about the Quran, the Old and New Testaments, and the Sunnah. First off, these texts are thousands of pages long, which obviously creates huge navigation hurdles. Then you add in language barriers, scattered sources, and translations that differ wildly because of human bias. All of this creates a massive lack of context, leading to widespread misunderstanding of the original historical meanings.
And building on that, the documentation highlights specific historical issues with translation and law extraction. Translators naturally add their own interpretation based on their specific theological schools. It just happens. Because of this hidden reasoning and a lack of transparency, scholars end up disagreeing on laws. And without a unified platform, it's virtually impossible for the average person to compare these verses objectively across different religions.
Section 2. Introducing Akrmna Higher Law.
So, to combat these historical problems, the developers are proposing a full-stack web application built on Google Firebase. The foundation of this app rests on specific sacred texts, but with a major caveat. The system mandates the use of the most authentic, public domain versions strictly in their original languages. So we're looking at the Quran and major Sunnah collections in Arabic, the Old Testament in Hebrew, and the New Testament in Greek.
Now, what's really interesting about this upload logic is how it avoids human error right from the start. The system relies entirely on an AI-automated workflow. An AI splits each book into individual parts or pages, uploads them straight into a Firestore database, and continuously tracks the completeness. Only when it's fully done does an admin trigger a release all function. Basically, it builds the platform's entire baseline without a single human altering the text.
Section 3. AI and strict translation.
To process these massive databases, the blueprint mandates what they call a strict translation engine. This means the AI produces a literal word-for-word translation. There's no interpretation, no added meaning, and absolutely no extended commentary or tough seer. The entire goal here is to strip away the subjective human bias you usually find in standard translations, giving everyone a clean, totally literal baseline to work from.
You can see how the architecture tackles these historical translation problems head-on. Translators adding bias, solved by the strict literal engine. Contradictions, handled by community voting, which we'll get to in a second. But perhaps the most crucial feature here is transparency. The original text is always shown side by side with the translation. That way, literally anyone can verify the accuracy, regardless of what language they speak.
Section 4. Community Consensus and Voting. Now, the developers know the AI isn't the final, infallible authority, so the platform relies on something called agreed-upon mode. This is a default viewing setting that automatically displays the best voted translation, the best voted explainer, and the best voted audio. By relying entirely on democratic community consensus, it's meant to remove single-source bias and establish the most widely accepted interpretation of the text.
Another really fascinating architectural choice is the subject system. This automatically groups texts from the Quran, Bible, and Sunnah by specific themes. By placing these texts right next to each other based on topic, the platform intends to resolve that missing context we talked about earlier, allowing for clear cross-religion comparison.
And this effectively solves those traditional law extraction problems. When scholars disagree, the agreed-upon mode steps in to show what the community actually thinks. Where there's usually a lack of transparency, user-generated explainers publicly show the exact reasoning behind how laws are derived. And to guarantee total transparency through the whole process, the original text remains permanently visible on every single page.
Section 5. The Digital Media Ecosystem.
So the crucial point is that beyond just text, this is designed to be a massive media hub, which obviously requires strict community-driven moderation. The workflow is heavily automated. If user-generated content, like an explainer or audio, receives more reports than likes, it's automatically flagged for review. If that flagged status sits there untouched for 30 days, the system just automatically deletes it. Simple and user-governed.
To solve the historical lack of visual learning tools, the blueprint includes an original video mode. This lets users export fully synced, customized videos in a standard 16:9 HD frame. These videos display a full original page of text alongside the chosen translation, the explainer, and synced audio. It gives users a really powerful, ready-to-share educational tool right out of the box.
And you might be wondering, what about monetization? Well, the documentation details a proposed price point of exactly $80. This is the fee for a creator content package on the platform's marketplace, which allows users to actually download these highly customized, synchronized media materials.
The revenue model for this is incredibly straightforward, facilitated by an integration with Checkout.com. Creators who make the top-voted content split the earnings right down the middle. 50% goes directly to the creator, and 50% goes to the platform. It's a clean 50-50 split.
Section 6. The Promised Global Impact.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the platform applies its community consensus philosophy all the way up to its own back-end control. To prevent any sort of single-person monopoly or governance problem, the CEO admin is actually elected by secondary admins through a voting system. Furthermore, every single decision made is tracked and logged in the admin panel to ensure total, undeniable accountability.
The ultimate stated goal of this entire architecture is massive. The blueprint aims to create a transparent, bias-free, unified digital dictionary and reference for world religions. It's looking to completely dismantle misinformation through a model of absolute, verifiable digital transparency, where every single correction is public and voted upon by the community.
Which leaves us with this final, really thought-provoking question from the source material. Can a technological framework truly create a universal consensus on humanity's oldest laws? It's a fascinating intersection of artificial intelligence, community voting, and ancient theology. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this architectural overview has given you a whole lot to think about.